His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador Xiaohui, Chinese Ambassador to Turkey, dear esteemed colleagues, distinguished participants, welcome to our first channel titled to the role of multilateral mechanisms in a changing multipolar world. As the keynote speakers have mentioned, right now international system is enduring turbulent times. After the dissolution of the USSR, the global order has witnessed a unipolar moment. After that, the multipolar reality of the international system has been started to enhance the relations between the states and the worldwide. Right now, we are witnessing and undergoing profound shifts that not merely in power distribution, but also in the way of cooperation architecture, of how the cooperation, conflict resolution, and strategic alignment are conceived and operationalized. Moreover, as I have mentioned, right now we are living in a multipolar world, but I would like to take the state to another step. We are also witnessing a technopolar world order, a technopolar world that is deepening day by day by the digital divide. A digital divide which causes also a digital asymmetry between the countries. Right now, the cutting-edge technologies are produced by few, but governed by fewer. Therefore, the democratization of the technology and the inclusiveness of the international system, the voice of the global South and non-Western countries are matter more than ever. I would like to thank you again for participating and coming to this panel. Today, our esteemed panelists will guide us through the key dimensions of multilateralism at our panel. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first esteemed speaker, Professor Gürol Baba from the Ankara Social Science University. He is going to talk about Turkey's strategic turn to Asian multilateralism, navigating regional platforms from Shanghai Cooperation Organization to ASEAN. The floor is yours. Also, 10 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to say thank you to all of you for being here, sharing your time and space together. I would like to touch upon 3 or 4 points in my talk. My first point is a term that we always hear, multilateralism. It sounds a bit vague, it sounds very, global southish, but in actual sense, in my talk, I will try to give it a bit of a vivity so that you can see how it operationalizes, especially from the perspective of Türkiye-China relations, in the sense that how multilateralism makes actually a lot of sense, although we are talking about bilateral relations, which is Turkey and China. You might have an idea about Turkey's geopolitical, geoeconomic, and even geocultural situation in the world, which is in between East and the West, and has been tilting towards the West for a long time. In like half a decade, this tilt has been partly reversed, and today I'm going to talk about this reversion. Maybe 3 or 4 significant regional organizations that we can talk about, which would frame Turkey-China relations from that multilateral perspective. Obviously, one of them is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the other one is Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia, Pacific Islands Forum, and ASEAN. Obviously, not all of these regional organizations, Asia or Asia Pacific, or if you may, Indo-Pacific organizations, they are moving or operating on the same ideological, economic, or political agenda. And this is the very crux of Asian regionalism, We have a wide variety of multilateral institutions, organizations, groupings in Asia. They all operate in a variety of vectors, I mean directions, but they do not necessarily clash. And this is the very important element of Asia or Asian international affairs, not necessarily relations in the political sense. 3 points. I've got three short subtitles in my talk. The first one is Turkey's strategic rationale, the mentality or the reasoning that deepening relations with Asian multilateral institutions. The second one, how it pays back in Turkey's proactive diplomacy. And the third one, the significance of Turkey-China relations within this perspective. Well, when we say multilateralism, as I said, it sounds like a vague term, but in actual fact, in its institutionalization, it is operating through institutions. Conflict resolution, cooperative security, and that gives Turkey another type of channel to be a partner in Asia. But ASEAN and Pacific Forum is another theme which expands Turkey's strategic vision in the region. Don't get me wrong, being a partner in these institutions will not automatically give you a functional, vivid performance increase. Because in Asian international affairs, things take sometimes longer time when it comes to operating within the institutions. As we all know, as my second title, Turkey has been running a proactive diplomacy. It's more than a decade, increasing its clout in Asia, increasing its clout in the Middle East, in Africa, even in Latin America. So we have a big rim in Asia, which is also called from a more maybe Indian or Japanese or an Australian point of view in the Indo-Pacific rim, from Gulf to the Latin America. All these Asian multilateral institutions, through their annexes, through their quote-unquote tentacles in the region, will basically not only pave the way for Turkey to be more active more functional in the region, but also gives us new agendas and gives us some sort of a uh, even like a power to be a determinant of those agendas. What about China relations? Before we get into China relations, we had a discussion with a colleague of us in Istanbul a couple of days ago about how Turkey shall see the region, Big Asia. And we came to a conclusion that there are like three dimensions. The first dimension is, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, South Korea, and Japan. There is the geocultural, geopolitical, and the geoeconomic aspects. They are important, but to what extent they are important in Asia is a different question. The second dimension is more regional, smaller powers, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Philippines, Nepal, and all that, which Turkey has been trying to do. But the most important dimension for Asian multilateralism, either through well-established institutions such as ASEAN or less established institutions such as CICA, is China and India together. That Turkey should, well, if not must, deepen its focus. Economically speaking, which is one of the most
it was held in Canada from June the 15th to June the 17th. I noticed that before the summit, Japanese media described the summit as G6+1 and believed that the United States played a dominant role in the group. So it is not multilateralism. And at the same time, the host, Canada, kind of underestimated the outcome of the summit and tried to keep a low profile for the summit. And as you may notice that about the G7, in past few years, G7 invited non-member states, and this year it invited South Korea, South Africa, Australia, Brazil, and as well as Ukraine, a lot of countries. But it does not mean that the non-member states can have a weight in the cooperation or can and try to gain a balanced and equal position in the system. And it is quite interesting that Saudi, UAE, and as well as Indonesia declined the invitation for the G7 summit this year. Indonesia's president chose to visit Russia instead to try to balance its diplomacy. So talking about the role of G7 and related to multilateralism, I believe it is kind of example that a multilateral platform does not focus on common interest, does not focus on the global governance. And it is for the US strategic goal, and the United States play a leading role in the framework. And as you may notice that the G7 summit has released the leader's statement about the situation in the Middle East. It is quite clear that the group supports Israel. And so the bloc confrontation and the biased national security interest is featured in this platform. So I would like to talk about the role of Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Shanghai Spirit. Shanghai Spirit is for realizing a real multilateralism from my understanding. So when we talk about Shanghai Spirit, it is featured by mutual trust, mutual benefits, equality, consultation, the respect for cultural diversity, as well as the pursuit for mutual benefits and mutual development. Well, China proposed the idea initially, but it took some time for the member states to try to understand the principle and agree on the principle. And finally, the principle, the Shanghai Spirit, as kind of undergirding principle for the development of the organization, was involved in the charter. So that is how China perceive common understanding or cooperation on the basic principles of multilateralism. And talking about the Shanghai Spirit, first of all, I believe it is quite friendly to the member states. When it works on consensus, it means that when a country decided to join in the platform, it can have its weight, its role in the platform. It is also very friendly to the newcomers. It is never too late to join in the platform. And at the same time, it is not a tool utilized by the major powers to achieve strategic interests. And talking about fairness and justice, especially when we make comparison between the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well as other platforms like, as I mentioned, the G7, it is quite clear who is supporting fairness and justice. And for the organization's multilateralism efforts, it is quite sure that the organization would like to work both on the short-term interest or the goals, as well as for the expectation for joint development. So it is a platform for inclusive cooperation instead of exclusive interest. And my third part will try to focus on the opportunity for China-Turkey cooperation. As for Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Turkey has been a very good dialogue partner in the organization. And it is not a kind of bargaining chip I noticed mentioned by some media that Turkey would like to use the dialogue partnership or the the pursuit for membership to trying to balance NATO or its relationship with EU. It is not the time for a country to pick sides between different platforms or try to utilize the influence to gain the interest. It is the time to talk about the opportunity for cooperation, especially in the economic field. I looked into the figures of the trade volume for the Turk export. It has been developing rapidly in recent years for Turkey's exports to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's member states. It accounts for almost 10% of Turkey's exports. So it is the time to talk about the balance of interest or balance of trade. It means that it is the time for look into the opportunity. As far as I know a lot of Chinese enterprises would like to invest in Turkey, would like to seek the opportunities. So it may be the right time for the Turkey to try to reach out to Chinese enterprises to provide an environment circumstances for cooperation. And for the Belt and Road Initiative, I noticed that some businessmen in Turkey would like to explore the opportunities under this framework. So a lot of potential for bilateral cooperation and also for the cooperation to build up the multilateralism between the two countries.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ms. Xiaohui. Before passing to the next speaker, I would like to inform you that we will have a Q&A session after the conclusion of the panel. Now we will carry on with our third speaker, Professor Murat Aslan from SETA. His speech will be about global politics and China.
Thank you, Professor. First of all, I would like to thank all participants and for the invitation for this event. I'm really excited because I see a lot of faces, expert on China, like Erman. Welcome. And I want to start with Chinese narratives, especially circulated for the last 2 decades. It's multilateralism, multipolarism, multicentrism. So what is the common feature of all these words or concepts or phrases? Multi. Not polarization, not centrism, or not lateralism, but multi. That means more than one or couple. Why? It's about power distribution. Because once you feel yourself strong enough to challenge, you can dominate the markets, you can easily shape the international environment, and if you have concerns regarding your national security or interests like Taiwan, one China policy, you can easily dictate or request. In this sense, that's normal. That's normal. And it requires what? It doesn't mean that you will compete, confront, but you can propose cooperation and joint action, even though we are still lacking. On the other hand, once you go through the political history, you can easily see the games, the great game, for instance, in Central Asia, or area of influence wars, especially of the great powers, either of Europe or the United States or the other countries dominating the term or era. But whatever, I think here the magic word is coexistence. We know that especially the term peaceful coexistence is most circulated by the Chinese politicians and scholars in the globe. And that's for sure, it does have a history. But the question in here we should ask is it so? If peaceful coexistence is possible, if it's consistent with the Chinese stance, if it's addressing the expectations of the other countries, either competing or be a subject of the treatments. In this sense, I think we should first start with the principles claimed by Deng Xiaoping, maybe earlier to him, Zhu Enlai, right? I don't know if it's a mispronunciation. So let me just circulate several sentences of them, several mottos, let me say. Bide our time. For what? To be a great power first and superpower maybe at the next stage, 2049. It doesn't matter whether a cat is a black or white as long as it catches a mice. Another motto claimed by Deng Xiaoping. And right after that, peaceful coexistence claimed under 5 principles. Right after Indo-China War. And let me just emphasize the basic concepts of them: respect, especially for integrity and sovereignty, mutual non-aggression, non-interference, equality and cooperation for mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence afterwards. Well, these concepts are good, though. Now we have to question all these principles and mottos if they're idealistic, if compared to the 1920s, right after First World War of the West, idealist, maybe with a different sort, or they are really pragmatic to realize the goals of China. So, in my opinion, China should review these foreign policy goals, especially if the new era is concerned. I will tell it later on. For instance, what does China want? What does China want to be, actually? Superpower? So what is superpower? First of all, we remember Beijing Consensus as an alternative to Washington Consensus, thanks to Shanghai Cooperation Organization. On the other hand, there's one clear thing: a superpower should be able to build norms. Second thing, should be able to project power militarily to another region. Another one should have a strong and resilient economy. And there must be a strong social cohesion inside the country, other than soft power addressing the expectations of the others. By the way, soft power does not mean cultural diffusion. We can discuss, for instance, Confucius Institutes, but it's about consistency in foreign politics and internal practices. It's also about respecting the universal values, and you can extend this discussion. And for sure, what does China want to be? Another answer could be hegemony. Well, I believe that if China aims to achieve such goals, no problem. If you are strong enough, if you have power to be projected, if you have a resilient economy, that's for sure. The inclination should be what? Being an hegemony. But I'm not sure China is ready or not, because they should decide. So if you want to, for instance, draft a book directly on this issue, the basic question of a book on it could be, is China able or not? That's very important. For me, yes, by the way. But for some, no. But important issue is what Chinese are thinking as an answer. Another issue maybe could be raised is, the famous world system theory. China is a core country, not semi-periphery or periphery. But once you go and visit the G7 summits, well, there's no China. Russia is out, as you may know. So the first question should be answered by Chinese authorities should be if China is a core country or not. I believe yes, by the way. Another issue, if China is a core country, a candidate or an actual hegemon, well, we have to remind one thing. There are privileges that a country could benefit, especially China. On the other hand, it brings a sort of responsibility. Why? Responsibility to regulate, responsibility to balance with a new understanding or interpretation, especially of international system. So the question should be directed to Chinese authorities then, if China is ready to be a for sure responsible, but a responsible actor ready to regulate the global system. That's important. Otherwise, once we are discussing the current Israeli-Iran aggression or escalation, or Ukraine-Russia escalation, we should locate China to somewhere as a reference point if China would do something or not. Well, I want to also present a perspective regarding the actual situation. Now, we are discussing Trumpification because, on the other hand, it's not new. We had Barackification, Georgification, or another, and believe in me, another US president will bring another set of norms, especially in the United States, and dictating the other countries. On the other hand, there is one thing important, especially for China, as of today. China has always been following a strategy. It's act and react. Once there's an action directly targeting the interests of China, China is reacting. On the other hand, the new term, I believe, requires a bit more preemptive strategy, especially for Chinese interests. On the other hand, let's check the numbers. It's important because it directly tells the existing picture and the dangers. Well, the United States, with a population like 333 million people, with a GDP per person $82,000, well, they are spending more than $900 billion to the military. On the other hand, they have $1.2 trillion deficit in every year. And their debt, it's $38 trillion. Let's compare China. It's almost 1.4 billion people, $12,800 per each person for a year. And China spares $330 billion, except the 7.2 increase last year announced by the Chinese government per GDP, by the way. And China has $1 trillion surplus in every year. And I think that's the summary of the global competition right now. Trumpification aims at foreign policy to reduce this surplus deficit at the expense of China, and in the meantime should eradicate all the debt of the United States, $38 trillion in years, not decades. So that's one reason. So in this picture, I think we should then question,
Hocam, last minute.
okay, how to balance. Why? If the United States is such an aggressive actor right now with military, politics, and if Chinese idealistic goals declared by either Deng Xiaoping or the other decision makers afterwards, I follow the congresses of the Chinese Communist Party, well, these idealistic perspectives are not able to balance the global power distribution. That means there must be a change in the posture of China. So the final question then, if China will do it or still continue with bide our time policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Murat Hocam. Now we will carry on with our last but not least speaker, Professor Changgang from Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. He is going to make a speech about the common role of China and Turkey in the shaping of a multipolar world pattern. Floor is yours, hocam.
Thank you, moderator. I'd also like to extend my thanks to our Chinese embassy and the SETA for holding this forum, providing this good opportunity for for us to exchange ideas, learn each other, and for mutual understanding. I'm a historian. Regarding the shared rule or common rules of China-Turkey in shaping the multipolar world order or world pattern, I'd like to begin my talk by tracing a little back to the history to see the common rules of what is common between Turkey and China. In late 19th and early 20th century, the Qing dynasty of China and the Ottoman Empire, located at the opposite end of Asia continent, actually were subjected to the bullying of Western powers. Both embarked on arduous quest for modernization and national strength. Zheng Jizhe, in January 1879, visited various foreign envoys and met Ali Farid Pasha, the Ottoman Empire's ambassador to the UK. In 1890, Xue Fucheng served as an envoy to Britain, France, Italy, and Belgium. While in Britain, Xue Fucheng purchased a map of Ottoman Empire and have the preliminary understanding of the Ottoman Empire's territory changes. In his diary, he recorded that his understanding of the geographical location and strategic significance of the Turkish Strait borders. Okay, thank you. In early 1890, Xue Fucheng met in London with Esat Pasha, and the Pasha sighed with deep resentment at the bullying by Britain, Russia, France, and other Western powers, criticizing the so-called treaties and the international law of Western powers as nothing but a deceptive talk. Xue Fucheng also met with Rustem Pasha, the Ottoman Empire's ambassador to Britain. Xue first inquired about the state of Turkey, learning by that time Ottoman Empire, learning that Ottoman Empire's vassal states were declaring independence one after another, and Egypt all fell in the control of Britain. On March 26, 1890, Rustem Pasha proposed to Xue Fucheng that Ottoman Empire was willing to form an alliance with Qing government, Qing dynasty. This I dug to the history archives. For Kang Youwei, a very outstanding late Qing philosopher, statesman, and also a revolutionary, recognized the urgency of modernizing China's states and society after its military defeat by the Western powers. He closely followed the global modernization movement. After the failure of 100 Days Reform, he was formed into exile for 16 years in 1908. He arrived in Istanbul and witnessed the Young Turks Revolution firsthand. In his writing, the founder, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the founder of Republic of China, expressed admiration for the 1908 Turkish Revolution. During the Republican period, actually a lot of articles about the revolution for Turkey printed in China, actually advocating for learning from Turkey, from Turkey. So, trace later back about the first contact between China and Turkey. From 19th to the late 19th to early 20th century, under the impact of Western industrial civilization, both empires attempted various reforms. In China, there is a self-strengthening movement or learning foreign technology in Chinese, 洋务运动, and also constitutional monarchy reform. Ottoman Empire, we all know Tashmat reforms and the Young Turks revolution, etc. Although these efforts could not fully reverse the empire's decline or phase, but they profoundly fought the national will of both countries in pursuing modernization and self-strengthening. After World War II, Turkey chose to join the Western camp, Western Bloc, becoming a NATO member, and pursue a radical pro-Western policy and the Democratic Party government in 1950s, I think, 1950s. However, the Cuban Missile Crisis, 1968, provoked a critical turning point, I think. Actually, this event, this crisis, deeply wounded Turkish national pride, awakening it into the risks of being a mere pawn rather than a player in great power games. Fostering the seeds of a quest for strategic autonomy and diversified diplomacy. For China, after undergoing a revolution, construction and reform and opening up, has forged a development path suited to its national condition. Its core tenets, including adhering to an independent foreign policy of peace and maintaining a high degree of autonomy over its development models, I think entering the 21st century, particularly since President Erdogan's promotion of a new Turkey vision, Turkey has explicitly made the pursuit of strategic autonomy the core of its foreign policy, actively promoting the transformation of the world order towards a multipolarity. China consistently advocated for building a community with a shared future for humankind, and firmly supports the democratization of international relations. Against this background, I think Turkey has found broad space for deepening cooperation and playing unique roles in global affairs. Say, both countries emphasize the central role of the United Nations in international affairs, oppose unilateralism and hegemonic actions, and advocate for resolving international disputes through dialogue and consultation, and also as important emerging economies and major developing countries. Both Turkey and China share similar stance on reforming the global governance system, enhancing the representation and voice of developing countries, and advocating for fairer and more reasonable international economic order. Both nations, both countries possess profound and distinctive cultural heritage. Both emphasize the value of cultural diversity, oppose clash civilization theory, and are active force in promoting exchange and mutual learning among different civilizations and safeguarding world cultural diversity.
Last
I
minute,
think
Professor.
if quickly come to conclude. From the humiliation in modern history to seeking and practicing strategic autonomy on the 21st century world stage, the trajectory of Turkey and China's rejuvenation reflects the grand process of the non-Western world reshaping the global landscape. When the Belt Road Initiative and the Central Corridor converge across the long river of history on the Eurasian continent, this is not merely a corridor for trade and economic exchange, I think. It is also a cornerstone laid by our two countries or two civilizations after enduring vicissitudes to jointly shaping a more equal, diverse, and inclusive world order. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Changgang. I also would like to thank to our all esteemed panelists for their insightful speeches. Now we will have 10 more minutes for a Q&A session. So you are more than welcome to ask your questions. But before asking, please introduce yourself briefly and also address to whom will be answering your question. Yes, please. We are waiting microphone. No worries.
Thank you, and I have a question for the Turkish participants. And when we talk about multilateralism, I think we have different understandings. For China, we talk about true multilateralism, and for the Western countries, they often mention the rule-based order. And I want to know how do you coordinate these two understandings of the multilateralism? And I want to know how Turkish people view the multilateralism. Thank you.
Can you also introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Yao from CIS, China.
So, Gürol Hocam, Murat Hocam. Gürol Hocam.
Multilateralism is not an old concept for the Turkish audience or for the Turkish policymakers. It's new in the sense how it is operating in Asia. For Turkey, multilateralism actually started with United Nations, then with NATO, then continued with other European schemes. I would not exclude the European Union because it's a very important trade partner, although we are not a member. So multilateralism from the Turkish point of view and the Asian point of view overlaps in a few respects. The first one is the number of participants. Second one is the purposes that those number of participants actually congregated around. Commonalities, I mean. The other sense was the type of asymmetrical pragmatism What Türkiye is not really familiar with when it comes to the performance of multilateralism is Asia, or maybe to an extent even the Pacific, is the basis of not necessarily rigidly institutions. Obviously, there are rules in Asian multilateralism, there are rules, but the type of the performance of those rules is different from the Western. Türkiye has been more familiar. There are the Turkish ones, which remain the Western. There are rules. To what extent the rule followers actually there? The main motto or the norms behind those rules is a question. So in other words, there is more asymmetry in what Türkiye is not really familiar with in this Western language is how to go along. Russia, the Olympics, type of performance. So this is the problem, not necessarily, but
systems. But if you are able to challenge globe with your strength and impose what you want, I think then you are a pole. So what I believe is that multilateralism, multipolarism are widely confused. Multilateralism is circulated in a much more mild way, though, well, it's at the end accumulating more strength. I don't know if you grab the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Murat Hocam, Gürol Hocam. I believe you will have a question. Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Kadir. Kadir Temiz. I am the Okay. My name is Kadir Temiz. I'm the president of ORSAM, Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Actually, I will ask the question to Ms. Xiaohui about, your especially perspective regarding this China's efforts in multilateral mechanisms and to build it throughout the years, and especially since maybe opening up the forums. But at the end of the day, as Gürol Hoca told us, Turkey has an experience, and you know, the historical experience since the Second World War. We have close communication with Western-oriented, international, institutions. And this multilateralism, in one way or another way, worked well for us, and in some cases, of course, didn't work well. Although we are still criticizing this, some Western countries, sometimes US and European countries, but at the end of the day, we have some norms, rules, and in European Union and in NATO, in other financial institutions. But the problem is in China's offer or China's perspective is what kind of norms and rules China offers us. Exactly how China will build this, and actually. Rather than the question of the other audience, but how we understand multilateralism, the question was like that. But the problem is how China convince us about these multilateral mechanisms. So how do you define it, this multilateralism, and how the institutionalize it? Because the equality and equal membership will be or not, and we see in the BRI is very difficult to see this equality between multilateral actors and China. Okay, I wonder about your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Talking about China's understanding about multilateralism, and especially today we focus on the function, the institution of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I believe that the organization, the SCO itself, is kind of example for China's understanding about multilateralism. And first of all, how China works the idea out is quite important. When we provide concepts, it is quite important to implement it. So I will raise China-US relationship as kind of example. And I remember Mr. Aslan talked about peaceful coexistence, how China understands the idea. So peaceful coexistence is part of China's basic principles and consistent ideas in our foreign policy for many years. And last year, we celebrated the 70th anniversary of the proposal of 5 principles for peaceful coexistence. I don't believe that China and Turkey will have problem on this part. I believe the audience in this room will agree with me. But for China-US relationship, peaceful coexistence is quite important and also very difficult. Last year, 2024, it was the election year of the US. It was a very difficult moment for the US government administration to try to balance its domestic affairs and foreign policies. So it was a very difficult moment and complicated scenario for China-US relationship. But if you look into China-US relationship last year, you will find that both countries emphasized the importance of peaceful coexistence. It was not only the proposal or the demand from China's side. The Biden administration also emphasized the importance of peaceful coexistence. So it is the part of the international order or the multilateralism. What principles matters for the countries, especially for the major countries in the world, how to work it out. And as for other parts, well, when we talk about responsibility, responsibility is complicated, I would say. But for a country like China, responsibility means that a major country should, first of all, prioritize its policies to focus on domestic development. So it means that if a country enters into the conflicts or wars with the other countries, it does not work for this basic goal or for the interests of the country. And at the same time, responsibility can be implemented in different ways, like the Belt and Road Initiative. So the public goods, I believe, should be the responsibilities of the major powers, major countries in the world, including China and the United States. So when we talk about how to institutionalize ideas, the Belt and Road Initiative, we have international forums to invite other countries to talk about their ideas, to exchange views. And at the same time, for China-Turkey relationship, well, it was a very good starting point that two countries try to accommodate the ideas together, especially the Belt and Road Initiative and the Middle Corridor. It was a very good starting point if we compare with the implementation of the idea between China and other countries. So this is a time, I believe, to seize the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Xiaohui. We will have another question there. Yücel Hocam.
I'm Yang Chen from Center for Tech Studies at Shanghai University. I would like to have a question for Professor Murat. In your speech, you mentioned a lot of issues about China's, foreign policy theory and practice, and China's role, future role in the global. It reminds me, the term, the Thucydides trap, raised by the Thucydides tribe, raised by the Professor Graham Allison. So it aroused a heated discussion about China, the rising power versus the dominant power in the past 10 or 15 years. So, but of course, this a lot of mistake about this term, and especially from United States perspective, from Western perspective. I have a question for you. From Turkish scholars, your perspective, how do you see the rise of China? What is your opinion about the China's rise? Rise of China from Turkish perspective. Instead of the Western perspective or United States scholars' opinion about China's rise. Please. Oh, sorry.
Murat Hocam, let's take all the questions.
Okay.
Since we need to prioritize the time.
Okay.
Yücel Hocam, and then we will have at background.
Yeah, Professor Yücel Acar from SETA. Actually, my question is going to be an addition to the previous question about this global system. All of us are observing with an unfortunate feeling that the use of force is getting widespread in international relations. That means the existing or the system established after the Second World War, legally speaking, is not functioning at all. We have seen in a very recent times that major powers like Russia and the United States tend to use the force more than ever. So they don't really have any concern of protecting the international legal principles, which are establishing the very foundation of the international system. It's quite clear that we have seen that China is not really trying to get involved in these military conflicts. That's quite good. And Turkey has been advocating for a global system which is going to be just and equitable, not involving the use of force. Our president has been emphasizing this for many years. So that means there is a match of the approach to the international system by China and Turkey. What is lacking is that there is not concrete collaboration with China and Turkey, how to, support a new approach, which is going to be, conflict-free, use of force-free, and would be more peaceful. And do you think that there would be any chance that China and Turkey globally cooperate to promote such a new system? Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Liang Xianjin from Shanghai Institute for International Studies. My question is very simple. My question goes to our Turkish colleagues. How do you define, or what your perceptions, predictions about Turkey's relations with the SCO? Okay, it's a very simple question in the future. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Eurasian Studies Center, Alev Kılıç. I have a short question for our second speaking, Mrs. Su. How do you see the prospects for Turkey vis-a-vis the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Thank you.
Thank you. I will have the last question because we are really out of time. I will have the last question. Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm Mehmet Fatizgi. I'm coming from Sosyal in Istanbul. My question is directed to the entire panel, but I'd really like to hear the Chinese perspective, especially on this, because we have talked extensively about multilateralism and basing it on mutual. Since FDI and especially infrastructure investments are some kind of internal methods which can be faced with competing interests within a country, how does China navigate such complex situations where conflicting interests within a country may cause instabilities? And I'm going to follow this question up with a second one. While Turkey itself is a stable country, the region can be susceptible to such instability because of competing interests. Where do you place Chinese-Turkish cooperation in ensuring stability in the region of Middle East?
Okay, thank you. We also have one question from our online viewers. I believe this question is for our Chinese colleagues. The question is, does the Chinese government have any precautions if there would be an oil block by Iran, as they did in the Gulf War? And due to this oil block, if there would be an oil crisis occurs? Thank you. You have the questions. So, like 3 minutes each, would be enough? Okay. Please, hocam.
Rise of China, you know, I was 35 years old. I was reading books, The Decline of the United States and Rising China. And currently 56 years old, still the same applies. China for sure is rising. I mean, it's a fact. If you review the amount of money in the treasury of Chinese government, you can see that. That's for sure. Defense expanding, for sure. But the question in here is, and I don't believe that the US is declining, by the way. The US is rising again. I mean, there's no problem with it. The issue in here, if this rise would attract a competition, would provoke a response from the others, it's actually on the agenda of the West. Just review the announcements of the European Union competitor and also the United States. Sometimes they say threat. So that's why not the rising, but the reactions of the others are important. So that's why I questioned the 5 principles. 5 principles means China assumes the other parties cooperate and collaborate with China. So I'm reading the line that China will start not peaceful, but preemptive coexistence. I don't know. Let's see. Regarding cooperation of China and Turkey, that's for sure. There are a lot of opportunities, but I would add something to my colleague. It's about Road and Belt Initiative. It's one-way road. It's wrong. If I purchase this eyeglass or this skirt, these are imported from China through a website. It was, I mean, they were in my hand in 3-5 days. But who can sell things to China through online websites in Turkey? I don't think so. So it must be a road that both parties should interact with each other. So that's one problem. If you want to cooperate with another country, the channels should be open to both. So then you can talk about coexistence. And Shanghai is building a new realm, especially for financial regulation of the markets. The bank established is very important with $100 billion capital. That's good. And I believe that it's good, though. The missing part is what the member states are sometimes swinging. India is looking east and west. So that's a problem. If any bloc is forming themselves up, I believe, there must be a commitment. On the other hand, it's for Turkey's benefit, to be in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but I'm not sure about the reactions of the West. We should review if Turkey could be a member of the EU. Well, I don't think that Turkey will be, or of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But we know that India is against. So this is another problem. So then Turkey should start what? Self-help system. Self-reliance. I mean, that's the solution, I believe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gürol Hocam.
Okay, let me underline just a couple of points. As a continuation of my first explanation. We have been having this discussion in a variety of forums a couple of days ago in Istanbul as well. That we have here in Turkey, as the Turkish scholars, policymakers, even the public, we have a pretty much established Western lens. So when we look at China, rise of China, Chinese foreign policy, I mean, the responsibilities that China shall take, we look at it from a pretty much of a from a Western lens, which is at the end of the Second World War, the West was the victorious, and they set up the rules and the institutions and the norms alongside, and everybody from the Western Bloc followed them up. And Turkey was the same. So when we are looking at from that prism, we would be expecting, and you should take it, please, naturally. It's a natural reaction because it has been the case for over 4 decades, maybe 5. It has been established here. So don't get us wrong, or don't get us from a biased perspective. This is how people think here. When they say China and the rise of China, there are certain expectations and Western-oriented expectations from China. For example, when they look at the GCI, that initiative, they look at GCI from the point of view of a new norms for the new international order. I have been trying to tell people that I know in different platforms that Asian international affairs, they don't work like that. When you say responsibility, when you say multilateralism, as my dear colleague just underlined, fake or real or whatever, yes, they are different in Asia. This awareness in Turkey is only slowly rising, very, very slowly. Okay, that's the first issue. Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Well, you need to put it aside with EU and NATO on the one hand of the equation, and Shanghai Cooperation Organization on the other hand of the equation. This is not a problem, but an issue in the sense that this is not a very well-balanced equation. Turkey would need a more active member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization if it wants to be more efficient, reliable, and trustworthy partner in Asia. That's out of discussion. That's, everybody knows that. But regarding our strategic relations with NATO, trade relations with the EU, that equation is not balanced, which Murat Hoca also underlined. So from the Turkish point of view, I think from these type of platforms, what we need to outreach and create to bolster this understanding of differences and try to close the gap between this, different understandings of looking at the world. This should be our job here. Let me finalize here.
Thank you. Thank you, Hocam. Ms. Tu?
Well, it's my it's my turn. Concerning the questions, I will provide 3 points. The first, about the security in the Middle East and as well as China-Turkey cooperation for the regional security issues. My understanding is that the concept for security is quite important. So if we look into the developments of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I believe that the process was positive. The member states started from security cooperation, and the member states talked about border security force and moved towards other areas of cooperation like non-traditional security issues like anti-terrorism. So it was a process for the member states to talk about their concerns about security, and the outcome, I believe, has been proved positive. And talking about the concept for security, especially for the current developments in the Middle East, Israel-Iran's conflict, it was a difficult time, and it is a critical moment for the situation's development. From China's perspective, we always emphasize that if one country maximizes interest, including the security interest at the cost of the other country's interest, it will not be the right way to resolve the problem, but only get into a dilemma that for its own security. And as for Turkey's role in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, first of all, from my experiences, that China does not force the other countries to pick sides between organizations. So it is open for China to accept new members for Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And when we talk about the institutionalized of the organization or the institution building of the organization, so it is the time for Turkey to consider its role to be a dialogue partner or try to be a former member. It is the choice of Turkey as well as the members of the organization. As I mentioned, that it's never too late to be a member since it works on consensus, but every country has its own choice. And as for China-Turkey cooperation, the trade issue, I noticed that a lot of speakers mentioned about the potential of cooperation. As for a lot of Chinese enterprises, they need guidelines, help from the Turkish sides. It is true. And for the oil price, it is interesting that I thought about U.S. concern first. It was an urgent challenge for Trump administration. If we looked into his first overseas visit to the Middle East, oil price was a big problem for the United States, for the inflation, and also for the tariff war. So for China, we believe that it is never wise to choose the extreme scenario to move forwards without wisdom or thinking. But if the regional development, especially for the situation between Israel and Iran, went into narrow space, it must be quite dangerous. So extreme scenario should be avoided. China and Turkey should play our role to try to ease the tension.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Go, if you would like to have remarks.
Okay, just one point. Talking about the multipolarity, the international order dominated by Western countries actually have over 200 or 300 years. It's very looks like a society dominated or reigned by a king or by an emperor. But this is not feudal times. It's a democratic times. Mm-hmm. So the international order need to be democratized. Every citizens have their own rights. Every countries, developing countries have their own rights. So this is a trend, historical trend, not just because rise of China, rise of Turkey. So for the rule of China or Turkey, say in Middle East region or in the global arena, I think is the rule of collective developing countries or the so-called global south to work together to strive for a more democratic, more equal, more reasonable international order. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable questions and answers. Our discussion is not over. We will carry on with the sessions at the afternoon. But I have good news for you. The lunch is ready. So I would like to invite you all to the lunch. Thank you for your participation.